Well, hello again. It's Adam here, and it's Tuesday, the 9th of April. This is the 13th week of the 15-week legislative session, so you'll pardon me if our brains are a little fried down here. A good thing today, just a moment ago, a young lady came by from Moms Rising to give me a petunia, or a little planted petunia, and remind me that we need to fund the Department of Early Learning. I get that. We do need to fund the Department of Early Learning, and we needed to fund the departments of lots of other things. I think I've kind of said my piece about the budget and about the need for revenue in that budget so that little kids and a lot of other people who rely on some service from state government can either survive or thrive. But right now, I'm going to talk about something else because that really depresses me, that budget. I just had a meeting with 3 other legislators and the governor about driving while intoxicated and the current need out there for us to do something about it. Not just a political need to quote unquote do something because of events, although that is true also. First there was the driver who killed 2 elderly people and I hope did not kill their daughter-in-law and grandchild. And then there was another event just the other day in which another drunk driver killed other people. These crises create a demand similar to the way that the crisis in Newtown, Connecticut created a demand for action on guns. All too often they just disappear out of the headlines. We look at the next day's headline about something else. We're concerned about other items in the news, and these things fade away. I've learned that you need to grab this opportunity while you have it, whether it's about guns or about driving while intoxicated, and take action immediately. I'm not glad that Newtown occurred or that these other deaths occurred. Of course not. It's something of a pragmatist in me after, 17 years here, to understand that this is an opportunity, and it's almost lucky for us, I put that word in quote marks, that it happened during the legislative session where we can answer it immediately before the demand fades away. The governor is also attuned to this. Representative, one of the House members has an excellent bill, which for a variety of reasons didn't get out of the House. It's not necessary to implement the budget, and so it can't move after cutoff date. That's an internally imposed cutoff. Unless we just all decide that it can. That's what legislators do sometimes. And we discussed with the governor some of the things that need to be in that bill in addition to what the House has already put there. To give you a little bit of history here, you may recall long before I was ever in Olympia as a legislator, long before they made me the chair of the Judiciary Committee, I volunteered my services to Mothers Against Drunk Driving to come down and lobby without pay for reducing the alcohol limit from 0.10, the old limit, to 0.08 of 1% alcohol. Made sure, my own bill that we passed, to take a driver's license administratively upon arrest and give it back to him if he's acquitted, of course. And give it back to him a year later, or as much as a year later, if he's not. We tightened up our laws on drunk driving, and I would like to think that that had a lot to do with the current trend downward in alcohol-related deaths and in driving while intoxicated as a behavior. We made it less socially acceptable. We have that opportunity again today. One of the things that had happened in the first of those 2 incidents, recent incidents, was that the driver had been ordered by a judge to have an interlock device. It's you have to breathe into this thing in order to activate the car. The car will not start unless you breathe into it. If you have alcohol in your breath, it will not start. And further, you have to blow into it again as you're driving every, half an hour or so. It's an inconvenience, of course, but you cannot drink and drive in this state, not if you've got an interlock device on your car. That driver didn't have one. He'd been ordered to and had violated the order. Part of what we have to do is to make these orders effective, to make them 100% effective. Judge says you have an interlock device on your car, you will have an interlock device. We have several ways to do that, one of which is simply to keep the car while the person is in custody. When the judge, if the judge finds that there is probable cause to make the arrest and to hold the person, to charge him, then in that order, the judge will also order an interlock device, and it will be placed on the car before anybody leaves. Literally, anybody leaves the building. I think that is, at least in its preliminaries and its outline, I like that idea. Even better, prevention, drug and alcohol treatment. In this case, it's alcohol. But in another context of offenders who have been in Department of Corrections for years for other offenses, when they get out, we already know that one of the 3 big items that keeps people from recidivating, from committing more crimes, is to have whatever substance abuse treatment they need, because substance abuse is very often the driving force in crime. Alcohol abuse is clearly the driving force in driving while intoxicated. All right, we know that. What if we were to start mandatory alcohol treatment in that first day in jail? And the order finding probable cause would also require, even prior to trial, that the person report to an alcohol counselor, be assessed, and if found to be in need of treatment, which is often the case, not always, then treatment is mandatory. Not maybe, not if you want to, not if you can afford it, it will be. And if you can't afford it, we'll need to pay for that. More about that later, having to pay for that. But we can find a way to do that. And that, to me, is an investment in public safety, probably better than any other chance we have this year. Another that's been talked about is really getting heavy with the driver who is either required to put on the interlock and doesn't, or it does and then evades it, either by using another car without changing the interlock, reporting it, and that is to forfeit the vehicle. No, forfeiture. That is not simply impounding it temporarily, taking it. I don't like that. It's very heavy-handed. But there are certain contempts of court orders that are also contempts, literally, of the rest of us who happen to be walking or driving along the street. And I think that is not an unproportional punishment for a crime. Now, that doesn't mean that a person who has an interlock device who wants to get a different car can't register the new car, have the interlock device put on the new car for some small $20 fee, whatever. Of course, anybody can change cars legally by reporting it and by putting the device on the new car. It's not going to stand in the way. But using other cars as a means to avoid a court order, one that has a lot to do with public safety, it ought to be punishable pretty heavy. It's not simply a contempt of a judge's order. It's a contempt of literally every person on that street. And I think it's not out of proportion. Now, all of these are going to cost some money. And we've got to pay for it. We cannot simply create another unfunded mandate. An unfunded mandate is when one level of government, could be Congress, it could be us, says you, somebody else, will do this, 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 this. We look good, we ordered it, we're heroes, but you're going to pay for it. We can't do that. Congress does that to us. It doesn't mean that we need to do that to local government. If we're going to mandate treatment, and the person is not able to pay for that treatment, is legally indigent, as many are, we need to pay for that. If we're going to require the additional personnel to check on making sure that these interlock devices are on people's cars as ordered, we got to pay for that. These are responsibilities that go with us as generating the rules. We can't say, this is going to be the rule, you're going to do it, and you're going to pay for it, but we're the guys that get to be heroes. Now, how to do this? Incidentally, we've been talking about this beer tax. Well, think about it. One of the House members told me today that he's got some data actually taken from drunk drivers in some jurisdiction by some university researchers that shows that 80% of the drunks who are caught DWI we're drinking beer. I didn't know that. Could have been wine, could have been spirits, I don't know. 80% of it is beer, the other 20% is wine and spirits. We're talking about a beer tax incidentally. It seems to me the logic is inescapable here, that beer tax needs to be extended. It has a sunset this year, and it needs to be directed to pay for exactly this stuff. The interlock device, the additional personnel, and the cost of drug treatment or alcohol treatment. I don't see any way around the public security here. The involvement of the legislature in this issue has not got to end with some whimper that we can't do anymore. We have an opportunity. Public arousal is high. This is the moment to act. And I would like us to take that beer tax, extend it indefinitely on the large breweries, not the small guys, because I kind of think that Washington's beer industry is taking off. These little guys, the micro brewers, need a little break. But I think the big beer companies that profit from this should be the ones who are taxed. And I believe that any brewery that makes over, 50,000 gallons, there's a number here, don't quote me on the number, but you get the idea, that if a brewery meets that quantity, it then starts paying tax prospectively on the beer it produces thereafter for the remainder of that year. We need to have the amount of the tax at such a level that it would be able to fund these projects. We need to cost out the projects. I'm not going to inflict all the arcane monetary figurings on you as viewers, but I just want you to know that we're looking at a way, I am, to find a level of that tax that would be sufficient to do these things for local government and for every person driving or walking on a street in the state of Washington. We can do this. So anyway, the little girl who brought this petunia by walks down streets, drives with her mom and dad, needs to be protected, and so do you, and so do I. This is for everybody. We have 6.25 million people in the state who will benefit from getting drunk drivers off the road. And if I sound a little hard-assed about this, it's because even as a raging liberal, there are some violations of public security that really tick me off, and this is one of them. That's the news from Lake Wobegon. Thank you.